They lived across the street, in a house that seemed perpetually dark, haunted by the blue light of an oversized black and white TV and the constant sharp beat of footsteps on the uncarpeted wooden stairs. There were 9 of them altogether. The kids, Bobby Jr., Billy, Bonnie, Brucey, Beth Ann, Barbara, and Belinda Jane, with Bobby being a sneering out-of-work high school dropout and Belinda Jane still in diapers at the age of 4.5. Mr. and Mrs. Pitkin were in their late 30s. He, a good-natured Mason who taught athletics at Connecticut Valley Hospital for the mentally insane. She, gaunt and saggy as a half-full sack of flour, with vacant blue eyes and bad teeth, an apron and varicose veins. Their names were Bob and Beverly. My brothers, sisters, and I had to stay at the Pitkins after school while my mother worked. My sisters were happy as long as they had first crack at the dirty Barbie dolls with trunks full of clothes Mrs. Pitkin had knit, and quiet as long as she let them lick the bowls of cake batter and icing. My brother was hardly ever there, and I thought that somehow I'd ventured into a strange and wonderfully foreign paradise of Americana. Even at the age of 10, I could tell there was a large gap in our family's frames of reference. While at my house, we had the New Yorker and Vogue laying on the antique coffee table, the Pitkins' house had a copy of TV Guide laying on top of the doily that covered the couch arm, and love comics stacked neatly in the bathroom, next to the doll with the velveteen skirt whose purpose was to disguise a spare roll of toilet paper. While my house had a constant parade of guests, including professors from the nearby university in denim and tweed, sarcastic, whiny modern dance majors from NYU wearing dangly silver earrings, black rights activists, theater chums of my mother's in heavy makeup, as well as an ever-changing variety of visitors from Europe and the coast. The Pitkins seemed infinitely more interesting. It was there that I learned from Bonnie how to shoplift small items like lip gloss and nail polish. It was the Pitkins' backyard that was watered down every winter night to make a hockey rink. It was at their house that Coca-Cola was served along with Kraft macaroni and cheese as a diet staple. The Pitkins also had an attic full of toys and dolls and Brucey Sears Roebuck silver sparkle drum kit, and there were interesting items everywhere. Boxes full of sequins and glitter that Beverly used for making seasonal decorations or signs for PTA bake sales, crucifixes and glow-in-the-dark plaques depicting praying hands, drawers full of tools and coupons and green stamps, none of which were ever to be found at my house. Beverly used wax paper instead of silver foil to wrap their school lunches, and they got to eat exotic things like marshmallow fluff or bologna on Wonder Bread. Their house always seemed to be littered with items my mother deemed a waste of money. Not only that, they talked great. They said bureau instead of dresser. We called it an icebox. They called it a fridge. When my father had lived with us, we'd called him Papa, but they called Mr. Pitkin Dad. It sounded so much more casual and, well, modern. Not only that, they said things that shocked us, plainly and simply. They said yous instead of you guys, and made racial slurs without thinking twice as though it was normal. They said ungrammatical things like ain't, which our 4th grade teacher had said wasn't even a real word. And Mr. Pitkin was a Mason. I got to go into the Masonic Temple once, with Beth Ann, its heavy burgundy velvet curtains and polished wood podiums, stained glass windows and patterned carpets. Beth Ann took me there for a Rainbow Girls dinner as her guest. She told me that her father knew all the secrets of the lodge, and that if any Mason ever told a non-Mason the secrets, well then, out he'd go, just like that. I guess it was about 7th grade that our families began drifting apart. Us kids were old enough to take care of ourselves by that time and didn't need to be there after school. Beth Ann and I went our separate ways when she started deliberately flunking out in school because it wasn't fashionable for girls to be smart. I just couldn't see eye to eye with that, and besides, by that time, she had tits and I didn't, and if you really want to know, it made a big difference. Not only that, her bureau was full of stupid straight clothing. I was getting into the hippie mode, and she told me she thought that was queer. So the Pitkins remained across the street, and remained still even after we moved across town. Occasionally I would go by on my bike and see Barbara playing in the dirt yard with her kitties, or see Brucey, now tall and masculine, bounding up the wooden steps, slamming through the screen door, yelling, "Ma, what's to eat?" Bonnie eloped at a rather early age, and Bobby went to jail for a time, grand theft auto. Beverly got dentures and dyed her hair black as soon as Belinda Jane was in school. My family finally moved to California, far, far away from the tiny town with its Dairy Queen and 2 movie theaters on Main Street, the automobile junkyard that had been just opposite from my house and directly next door to the Pitkins. Sometimes, though, with a certain smell, maybe Velveeta cheese being grilled and burning, or wet wool socks, or damp dog, I'm reminded of the Pitkins' house with its constant pandemonium, its background of game show chaos, its braided hooked throw rugs, its wax fruit sitting in bowls that were won at carnivals, and its pastel bathrooms with a chipped enamel starfish on the walls. One example of sloppy speech can take me back there immediately, to the living room floor where, if we were good, Beverly would let us play with her empty Avon bottles, and if we weren't, she'd cuff us on the side of the head, muttering, "Little bastards." Sometimes I wonder why I like a certain piece in a junk store, why the hell an amber glass blown ashtray in the shape of a swan would appeal to me, and then their house comes back to me, with its cheap lace curtains and endless pairs of muddy winter boots lined up in the kitchen in front of the register. Once in a while, my sisters and I recall something about the Pitkins and their polar opposite ways, and we fall down hysterical with laughter about white trash and rednecks. But every so often, out of nowhere, I'll get an intense, shameful craving for Wonder Bread smeared with Best Food's real mayonnaise.